folks, welcome to Myers Metal Detectors, located in sunny Tampa, Florida, where we sell nothing but fun and adventures, treasure hunting gear, and anything you can imagine for metal detecting. Give us a call, 813-237-1939. Happy hunting and dig deeper.
Live from sunny Florida.
Okay.
Well, folks.
Okay, I think Daryl's dropped out for one reason or another.
Well, we'll get started there, Jeff, and you could try to bring him back in. Well, folks, today we've got an exciting guest, but we're going to go ahead and get started. We are live now, correct, Jeff?
We are indeed.
Okay, well, then I'm going to run through it then, my friend. Today's show is brought to you by your friends at Myers Metal Detectors, where we not only sell fun, but we sell adventure. And the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Treasure Talk guests and members belong solely to the guest or member and not necessarily to Myers Metal Detectors, Phil Myers, Jocelyn Myers, or Jeff Monin.
This is me.
Indeed, indeed. Let's see.
And the purpose of Treasure Talk is to promote the hobby of metal detecting, treasure hunting, and educate our members in a fun way. And today we've got Daryl Miklos from Cooper's Treasure, and we had him, but now
I found it.
Now he went away again. So
I'm going to give it up to Jeff to try to locate him and bring him back on. And Daryl,
there he is. Okay, we're introducing. This is Daryl from Cooper's Treasure. So everybody, as soon as he gets back, here he goes. I'm going to bring him on.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, indeed. Now we're live. Daryl, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
You are quite welcome. It's our pleasure to have you.
Absolutely. A famous TV star.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That kind of, believe me, you are.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, we love the show. And for those who don't know about the show, why don't you just give us a quick rundown on what the show's about?
Well, as a kid growing up, my father was a really famous treasure hunter, found millions of dollars of treasure in his lifetime. And through his course of treasure hunting, he was successful and was invited to go on the Merv Griffin show in 1978. And he met astronaut Gordon Cooper there. On that show, they were both guests of the show. I was in the back green room, and I got to meet Gordon for the first time. Albeit I was a kid when I first saw him. I went, oh my God, that guy's an astronaut. He's been in space, and how exciting. But fast forward a few years later, he and my dad actually tried to do a few television shows or get something going on TV, and nothing ever really came to fruition. And in the mid-90s, he actually got a lease in the Bahamas. And brought Gordon Cooper over there, and we were going to try and set up a lease to work something in the Bahamas similar to the second season area of Cooper's Treasure. It never came to fruition, and so we were there for like 3 weeks trying to negotiate a deal with the government, and something just didn't fit in at the time. There was a moratorium in place, and it was really hard to break that moratorium, so Gordon and I became really good friends when I flew back to LA with him. And I told him I was trying to start another business on the side of treasure hunting. I was looking for an office if he knew one. He said, why don't you come where my office is? I got room. And that's how we became friends. And we started talking treasure and talking about his lifetime achievements as a treasure hunter, working with Kip Wagner and Robert Weller and all sorts of big names in the treasure hunting world. And I asked him, well, why don't you and I go on a few expeditions? So we did. And went on several expeditions in Mexico, a few off the coast of Florida, and then he started getting ill from Parkinson's, and as a result of Parkinson's, he had a heart attack and died in October 2004. But prior to his death, he and I had been working on several shipwreck locations together, and he told me about the story of him flying in space during his Mercury and Gemini missions, and how he was able to identify shipwreck material from space. There's a call coming in. Utilizing some of his technology that he had on board. Supposedly he had a crude version of a magnetometer on board the capsule. We weren't able to really confirm that on the show, but later on after the show aired, I did confirm that with one of the engineers that it was true. There was one on board. He also used high-tech cameras at the time, what we would call high-tech, and he kind of knew the roots of the Spanish, the trade routes. It's not that he kind of knew, he was very well versed on the Spanish routes. So he put together a sea chart, and we called it the treasure map from space. And before he passed away, he gave that to my father, but he gave me the files. And the storyline is I have to try and contact my father, reconnect with him to get this treasure map from space, because the files tell you where the stuff, or what numbered areas, what's in those numbered areas, but I didn't know where the numbered areas was because I didn't have the sea chart. My dad gave me the sea chart, and it's about me following up on Gordon's legacy, and hence the name of the show was called Cooper's Treasure.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've watched it, and I think it's done very well. And for people who haven't seen it, they could probably still pull that up on YouTube, I imagine.
You can get it on YouTube. I think it's still showing on. Somebody just told me that they have a streaming app called Discovery Plus. It's on Discovery Go. It's on Amazon Prime. You can Google it and watch 5-minute clips on YouTube, and so there is a way to still see the show.
Yeah, it's very well put together, and it's one of my favorites. So you've got more in the lineup for that program?
We're not going to be filming any more of Cooper's Treasure. We ran into a little bit of a problem with the governments about issuing permits for salvaging. That's always a sticky department when it comes to the industry. So I've got something else in the works. Can't really comment on it, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to be new. It'll be totally different from Cooper's, but it's all about treasure and the hunt. So it actually expands on it a lot more. So it's an
I lost you there for a second.
Sorry, my phone keeps
Because you're popular.
Yes.
It's actually a treasure hunting partner of mine who's calling me because I called him earlier, and then he probably goes, "Oh, he didn't know I was doing this." So anyway.
Well, before I get started asking questions, Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to comment on?
No, I think, we just, I got the questions to Daryl so we can be a little bit prepared so he doesn't get blindsided. And that's not something that we really do, blindside people. But, I watched the show, and I thought it was fantastic. I really liked it. So I was hoping he better have another season, but we'll you'll let us know.
I will
when anything new comes out, so we can tune in.
Yes, and even if I didn't do any more television, I'm always on social media, and I will be revealing stuff that I'm actually working on in my private world that not necessarily shown on TV that I'm doing, and got a lot of neat stuff going on, so I'm very busy.
Yeah, and I just found out you're out in the Bay Area, out in California. So I imagine there's treasure wrecks over that way too to work too, besides Florida.
Well, I would rather stick to the Caribbean and the Atlantic, only because of the massive numbers of ships that traverse through that area. There was a few that have traveled up on the West Coast, but you're talking really deep water and really cold water, and it's not my forte, is deep and cold water.
Yeah, and bigger sharks too, I imagine.
Probably, yeah. I've done some diving on the West Coast, but I much prefer to look for shipwrecks in the Caribbean and the Atlantic.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm going to start firing off a few questions, and folks who are on here, if you've got some questions for Daryl, just send them on the Facebook app, or Jeff's watches YouTube. They go by so fast for me that I can't read them, but my wife is on Facebook, and she'll write the ones down and hand them to me. But we do have some that have already been sent in. And our good friend George KG Diggers is asking, what's the strangest thing you've ever found treasure hunting?
Um, oof. My wife. No, I'm kidding.
We use that all the time when we're
Yeah,
on the.
That's
We're
that's
hunting.
actually,
probably your favorite.
she's my
Everybody
best
always
friend.
asks you, when you're hunting the beach, they come up to you, "What's the best thing you ever found?" And I always say, "My wife," and they go,
You
"Ah,
better come up with that answer all the time. I would think it would have to be this. It's a
oh, cool."
Mayan pendant that was worn by some high-ranking Mayan leader, and it was found on a shipwreck. And usually these things were melted down, but this one was intact as much as it could be, and you can see the corrosion on the back. It's made of brass or some sort of bronze in a sand cast. And I just think it's exceptionally beautiful because it's very rare to find Mayan artifacts on a Spanish galleon or a shipwreck of Spanish origin that's still somewhat intact. And it's really neat. I really like this.
Did you have it tested to see what the metal was?
No, because I'm pretty familiar with this metal, and I think it's a cuprous type of metal. So it's brass, or it's mostly brass. It's copper and nickel mixed together. It's kind of bronzish,
Hmm.
and that's why you get the green on there.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That is a cool piece.
yeah, and then you can see still got the loop for the wherever they put a chain or a string through it. It's
Yeah,
just one of my. To me, it was really unique because I've never found anything like this. Um, I found a lot of strange stuff. I mean, I've located modern shipwrecks that were sitting right on top of really old, early colonial period shipwrecks, and that's always kind of exciting. It just lets you know that it's kind of like a dangerous curve in the road. Everybody seems to crash in the same dangerous curve depending on the weather, and same thing in the ocean. Nothing changes, and so uh, usually, if you find a modern shipwreck, don't necessarily go down and go, well, there's nothing else here but modern material, because most likely you'll find something else that's much older. And I've run into that. I can't tell you how many countless times where modern material is sitting on top of something older.
yeah. You find that even in metal detecting home sites. You might have a '60s house that was built on top of a 1800s property or house.
Yeah.
Hey, so yeah, we've had a question already on that find you have there. What time period you date that to?
It's at least 1,200 years old, from what I understand. The pendant itself is 1,200, but the wreck was an early 1600s wreck.
Right. So
So
one of
it
the
had been
sailors,
a family heirloom within the Mayans for many years before the Spanish got a hold of it.
yeah. So one of the sailors liked it, took it with him on the ship, and hence you've got it. That's a,
Exactly.
that's really cool. That's
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
story.
yeah. We got a question from a YouTuber, Mark Fiorella. He wants to know, do you ever find old bones?
You know, I personally haven't. I am aware of maybe two occasions that somebody has found a bone associated with early colonial period shipwreck, but it's, again, human bodies are organic, and organic material just doesn't last in the ocean. Therefore, it's uh, almost, well, I've never seen it. So it's never happened to me, and I've only heard it happen a couple times, and it's usually more modern wreckage. So it's very
Hmm.
rare. I've only heard of one that was found on a 1600 shipwreck where actually a large silver bar went down, landed in the sand on the hard pan, and I guess after so many years, either the silver bar rolled off, and somebody noticed that there was an impression in the sand with tax stamps and all of that identifying a large silver bar. When it lifted up the sandstone, on the back half of it was a bone from the arm still attached to it. So somebody must have went down grasping hold of the bar, sank to the bottom, lost their life, and it gradually just their body, due to the being under the ocean, was
Yeah.
gone, and the only thing left was that bone, but it would have been covered up by the silver bar, the weight of the silver bar, so it was still intact, and then the bar somehow got lifted, but the impression was still there. So that was the only time I've heard of it. I've seen pictures of it, really creepy, but It's very rare does that happen. And unfortunately, because of that, organizations like UNESCO and other scientific entities think that treasure hunting should be illegal for just that reason, that they consider it a burial site. But we look at it in a different light. We don't see shipwrecks as something that would be what they refer to as in situ preservation, because of people lost their lives. If that were the case, there would be so many things that people should leave in place. Like if an airplane crashes, you're not going to leave it there where it crashed. You're going to identify it and then remove it. Right. And our job is to protect the history of what happened, because if a lot of the times that if these shipwrecks are left in situ, none of the stories behind that shipwreck will ever see the light of day.
Yeah, and people wouldn't get to see, just like, Mel Fisher's museum down in Key West and over on the Treasure Coast. I mean, people get to see that, and they can lift a silver bar or a gold bar or whatever, and, that's all part of it. The antiquities part of it. People get to learn the history.
Right, and not only that, I'm going to make a shameless plug here, but Spanish Made Antiques in St. Augustine is probably the best treasure store in the world, as far as I'm concerned. And it's got more treasure from different periods, from ancients to early colonial, Spanish, English, you name it, it has it. And it's a store it's a museum you can walk through and buy something from. And yeah. I don't think that it should be frowned upon buying and collecting treasure coins. Why should it? Because UNESCO and all of the other academic organizations are doing the same thing. They're just getting federal grants, and they're getting cushy jobs and salaries. And what's the difference?
Well, yeah. I haven't personally. I haven't gotten over to see Mark in his store yet. I'm going to. I've already informed him. He was a guest a few months ago, and he's coming back in July. A couple of friends of mine, we're going to England in September on a metal detecting trip. So hopefully I'll find some Romans and some hammers and some other good things, and he's going to make me some jewelry out of it.
Oh, good. Yep, he's the man to do it. He's really good.
Yeah, we've seen some of the pieces that he makes there, and I just thought they were fantastic.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's super well educated when it comes to historical artifacts, even more so than me, because his range of knowledge in artifacts going even further back into ancient coins, Roman and biblical periods, are much more than mine, because I'm more focused on early colonial treasure, and he's more focused on the broad spectrum. So it's such an interesting store.
He's a wild man.
Yep, definitely.
And I know you're probably working with him on different things right now, huh?
Yeah, Mark and I are really close, probably one of my best friends, and we share a lot of things in common, and we have a lot of projects in the work, and yeah, definitely.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let me go through some questions that we have here. Glenn Young is right. How has other modern technology been able to reproduce Cooper's maps, or have they been able to do that yet?
I guess you could. If you take satellite images, even if you were to go Google and Google map something, or Google Earth it, you could look and kind of guess at it. But if you don't have a prior knowledge of the routes that the Spanish were taking, and it really isn't even so much of identifying where you think there may be a shipwreck using one of those technologically advanced types of software. You really have to know, and you have to spend the time, because you can Google anything, or you can look up on the internet and get satellite images of anywhere you want to go. And yes, in some cases, it's really cool to be able to use that. But if you have no knowledge and you're just going to go blindly into an area, you better be prepared to spend a lot of money and time to get there, and be prepared to find something that's not necessarily treasure related.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bob Severe is asking, how can you go to Spain and find the ship's manifest when the ship sunk? Wasn't the manifest on the ship when it sunk?
Well, I'm sure that they kept some record of the manifest on the ship, but I can guarantee you this: when they left Spain where they had to report to Spain, and Spain had a copy of everything that was on board of those ships. If you look at all the cathedrals in Spain and throughout Latin America, that stuff was not built for free. And so they had a good record keeping, they had a great accounting system. Yes, there were a few things that fell through the cracks, but they kept very good records. In fact, when I was filming Cooper's Treasure and I went to the archives of the Indies, I think it was the third episode of season 1, the gentleman, the director of the archives of the Indies, told me that if you stack the paperwork just from the beginning of Columbus all the way to present day, it would span, stacked it, not in line, not papers next to each other, but stacked it, it would go 40 kilometers. That's how much paperwork the Spanish kept on everything they built. Whether it was lost at sea or not, they had record of it. There were people that were reporting in the New World, whether that been Mexico City Mint, that kept good records and manifest of what was loaded on that ship. If it was on its way back to Spain and it sank, they knew what was on there when it sank. If there were any survivors, they could tell either the authorities back in Spain or in Havana or Mexico City where those ships sank, and they could try to salvage some of it. But there was a very good record keeping process done by the Spanish, and that's why they were so successful.
Well, didn't they do that, Daryl, so that, they kept a manifest so the king of Spain would know what was on the ship, and and the ones that did arrive, and they could kind of tabulate what was coming off so that the crew didn't rip them off.
Oh, that's absolutely right. And they even went a step further. They already had each artifact or coin or silver bar allotted for high-ranking officials, friends of the king or queen at the time, the church. So there was no separation of church and states, and I can tell you why. On one side of a coin, you have what's the shield, which represents the king or the entity in power. On the other side, you have the crossica. And this, it lets you know you got church and state working hand in hand. And so they wanted to make sure that they kept good records of who got what when that stuff came back to the old world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how they knew for salvaging or trying to salvage. Most of it, I imagine they couldn't salvage most of the shipwrecks because the water's too deep unless you're a diver. But that's how they knew what to look for there, too.
Exactly. I mean, there was a perfect example is the Atocha manifest. That they had the archive, they had copies of the manifest to the Nuestra Senora de Atocha found by Mel Fisher. They had all the records in the archives of the Indies. I actually have a copy of the original manifest to the Atocha, and they kept all the records, so they knew exactly what went down. Again, there's a lot of things that slipped through the cracks, like the very long chains that you saw Mel Fisher wearing that were 21 feet long or whatever. That was contraband. You couldn't be taxed on jewelry. So that's why you saw so much jewelry on those ships when they went down. And they were trying to avoid taxes on that.
Yeah. We just had Mel's son on. Kim was on, and a while back we had a couple on that worked for Mel that actually dove on the wrecks and helped them salvage all the Atocha and the Santa Margarita.
Yeah,
Smith Jones and his wife KT Jones.
Yeah, my dad was partners with Mel Fisher in the 70s, and they were actually working together. That's when I got my initial training as a young man back in the late 70s. And I worked on my dad and Mel Fisher got in a big problem. Let's say their partnership dissolved, and my dad got an area next to Mel's area down near the Marquesas Keys, and we were looking for shipwrecks and can't go into a lot of detail about what happened, but we weren't there for very long, because even though my dad had the right to be there, it was just too much competition, too much stress. And so we moved on from there to the Turks and Caicos Islands back in 1981 and worked there. And then we just decided, my dad just decided to work his own areas. But my dad used to work with Mel, and they used to get along really well in the late 70s before it fell apart in 1980.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he had it rough. I mean, dealing with the government, you've had to do that too, haven't you? Trying to deal with the various governments, and that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's definitely not. And that's probably the most difficult procedure in treasure hunting, aside from the finances. You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have the backing of a government to work with, and in the United States, even in the United States, I hate to rain on everybody's parade if you're wanting to be a treasure hunter, but if this is the wrong business to get into, if you're starting right now, because INA, the Institute of Nautical Archaeology and History from Mexico, you've got UNESCO, you've got the state of Florida, you've got every organization, NOAA, they want to shut every treasure hunter down, period. They don't want this to go on anymore unless they are doing it. I'm trying to be friendly, and I would love to be able to bridge that gap, but unfortunately, institutions like that right now are not welcoming anybody that they consider to be a treasure hunter. And at least in historical shipwreck recovery, it's a very, very touchy subject to them. Again, they believe in in situ preservation, where they believe a shipwreck should stay at the bottom of the ocean. Given those types of conditions, I would love for any of those scientists that work or archaeologists prove to me that a shipwreck in situ preservation is being preserved. I would call it in situ degradation.
Absolutely.
I would agree.
And eventually the earth will claim it, so it'll be gone. The history's gone. Nobody knows anything about it. And, people collect everything, and the archaeologists, I guess, don't want us to be able to collect anything.
That's absolutely right. And it's really, really unfortunate because this is a really tough subject for me to talk about, because I get so frustrated because the people in those institutions and academic organizations, some of them are really nice people, and they all share the same passions. In fact, I'm sure that in private, they would tell you the same thing and be just as passionate as I am. And just because they would lose their jobs if they were to actually step up and say, those guys are really good at what they do. In filming season 1 of Cooper's Treasure, we located more than 55 shipwrecks locations. In season 2, we located probably close to 100. That said, in those 2.5 years of filming Cooper's Treasure, we located, let's round it off to 150 shipwrecks. We turned that information over to the Bahamas, and how much of that would have been located by, let's say, UNESCO or NOAA or any of those? They don't have the money, they don't have the financial wherewithal to just go treasure hunting, and we are doing the work for them. And in some cases, I turned over tons of information. When we were filming Cooper's Treasure season 2, we turned in all that information, played it by the book, gave the Bahamian government all of the locations that we were at, and we won't get credit for doing that from UNESCO or NOAA or anything like that, because it's in their eyes, we are thieves. We are treasure hunters. We are not good people to work with. And anybody caught or crossing that line, if somebody works for NOAA or UNESCO were to cross that line and work with us, just work with us, they would be blacklisted. And so it's really, really unfair. It's sad, but it's the truth of what this industry has turned into.
Well, yeah, you would think the governments would want to work with you a little bit, if nothing else. I mean, if you pull up if you pull up $300 million in gold, and they get their share of it, that's all the government cares about anyways, money.
Well, absolutely. I mean, look, the bottom line is they're doing it for the money. UNESCO, NOAA, they're all building they're building their empire where they control cultural patrimony and controlling it. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily out there in the field as much as we are. And private ventures or companies like ourselves, I think we could do them a great service if they were willing to work with them. And the only reason why neither side's willing to work with each other is because there's so much vitriol and hatred towards each other, where somebody like me, I like to play the middle ground. Hey, if you want to work with me, let's share some ideas. We were in season 2, we were the only guys that I know of that, and granted, I was only one of the guys who kind of put this idea together, but we put a GoPro camera on a magnetometer and synced it with the software program so that whenever we saw reading on the magnetometer, we knew what we were looking at and they were time synced. So we could review some of this stuff and look at it and not even touch it or even go in the water. Nobody's ever done that. UNESCO's never done that. I mean, there's certain things that we could help them do. I'm giving a perfect idea to whoever's treasure hunting. If you put a GoPro camera and you sync it up with your magnetometer, not only do you will see the readings, you have to have clear water, granted, but you would be able to see some of the artifacts without even diving in the water and make a decision whether should we go for that or not. You know, if it's a modern piece of wreckage, you go, take that big mag target off there. We're not going to go there. It's a big modern anchor or a big stuff like that. I think that they would benefit by working with people like us. I would be willing to do that. I'm not in it for the money. If I was in this for the money, I'm really being stupid, because I could be a mega millionaire by doing real estate here in California. I could have started years ago, but no, I did something that I'm passionate about. I'm not doing this only for the money. Yes, I need a business that's actually going to stay afloat. But if it was all about the money, my God, just ask my wife. I could have done so many other things to make more money. This is just me being passionate about what we're doing. And if they looked at that side of treasure hunters, then maybe they would have a little more respect and they would actually be able to work together with us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, let me get back to our questions here. And darn it, now I didn't write the person's name down. I asked about the silver coin. The coin that you had up, the Spanish coin, they were asking what the percentage of silver is in that coin.
Well, I would say it's about 9.75 silver. It's each one is different, but they're very pure. This is a good quality silver coin. This one came off the 1715 fleet. This one was found by my father and me when I was a kid.
Oh, it's a beautiful coin.
And found that in 1978. That was one of the first places I dove with my dad. So I don't think it's 999 fine, but 9.75, I would assume, close to that. You know, yeah. It varies too. It varies, but the assayers who put their mint mark on this, they had to make sure that there was good quality control and that silver was as pure as it could be for circulation. And so they were very, very, very good at making sure their silver was a good, high quality standard. There's not a lot that went by the Spanish accountants.
Right. Yeah, that was Gary Toledo who asked that. And I see you, Gary. I see you said thank you. Thank you, buddy, for tuning in.
You're welcome. Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, you know, when we were talking with Mel's son, he was saying that some of the gold was higher carat than what was stamped on the bars. And he thinks they were smuggling that or paying off the assayer.
Hey, you know what? Corruption started somewhere, didn't it?
It did. And I think that was a perfect example of it, along with the jewelry, the long chains and stuff like that, so they didn't have to pay taxes on it. So I wish it was that way today.
Yes.
There was some loopholes for regular people.
Yeah, well.
But
we're not talking politics today.
Oh, that's right.
We can talk politics about the colonial period, though.
Okay, here, I got another questions on here. And this is from Jeff's friend, Tim the Mumbles Man. What's the most frightening thing that occurred while treasure hunting?
Um, well, looking back after surviving it, well, there's several. There's mechanical failures are horrible. I remember one time this was probably in 1983. Oh, no, wait, no, this is in 2001. I was coming back from the West Indies, and I was headed around the south, just north of Cuba, about to make that curve, headed up to Miami area. And we had a cyclone, not a hurricane, a cyclone from this side and a cyclone from this side. This cyclone was pushing water this way, and this cyclone was pushing it this way. So the boat was not only rocking like up and down, it was rocking side to side. And we were on a 105-foot vessel, and we were taking on water. Everything was flying around the boat. Whether you batten down the hatches or not, everything comes loose. And then it was 30-foot seas, so a 105-foot vessel breaching the top and then going down and then being hit side to side. You're bound to take on water. It went into the scoop that led to the galley, and then we had a fire while we were in that. That was one of the most scary moments of my life, because we were almost not able to put out the fire. So that right there. But diving wise was going down 210 feet on a single tank of air. When I was filming Cooper's Treasure 1, I lost all my senses, and I just got excited, overwhelmed by the moment, went down and did something really stupid. And a lot of people go, oh, that was fake. You didn't really go down there with a single tank. You weren't that deep. And damn, I sure was. And I really am lucky to be alive today for doing something so ridiculous. But I got so caught up in the moment. It was down when I was about 210 feet, and I was looking over the ledge going, oh my God, it drops down another 3,000 feet.
I remember that.
And I was thinking of my kids at that moment. I said, this is really dumb. This is so dumb of me. What am I doing on a single 80-pound tank? And I went back up, but coming up was a lot harder than going down. The current over the contour of that shelf was pushing me downward. So I had to fight to get back up. And I ran out of air about 10 feet before I got to the surface, but I made it. I'm here today to talk about it and warn everybody, never get caught up in the moment. Always pay attention to your dive gear and your amount of air and time underwater, because there's nothing worth dying for, especially if you have kids.
Right, that's true. I remember that, watching that episode,
Yeah, and then it was a close call. It was no BS. The one thing I did like about Cooper's Treasure is we tried to keep it as real as possible. And when I say that, it's the only thing that sometimes when you're filming TV, they ask you to go dive in again. The boat wasn't ready or the safety diver wasn't in there. So when you're filming TV, it's never going to be 100% authentic, because there's certain things you have to do in order to film what it is you're trying to film. Yeah, also, another thing is when we were filming, we weren't exactly honest with the audience. We never gave them the exact locations. So I wasn't going to go, okay, I'm right here next to this rock. So after I'm done filming the show, why don't you guys, giving this image to everybody, tell them, go dive there and you'll find the shipwreck. I wasn't going to do that. So that part of Cooper's Treasure was kept a secret, and I think it's common sense. You're not going to give away exact locations when filming a TV show that's going to be seen by hundreds of millions of people.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, it's to be that way. All right, so we got another question from my good friend Rick Tumbleson. He wants to know, have you ever found a Lincoln penny when you're on a Spanish site? And we'll call it a stinking Lincoln. They call it right.
I haven't. I've never found a penny, because it's funny enough. I was in the Caribbean where I dive most of the time. There's very few bits of modern trash. Now, when you are diving, let's say on the 1715 fleet off the Treasure Coast of Florida, you're almost 95% of the 99% of the time going to find modern trash, and that could be a Lincoln penny. In those cases, we found, I think the people who work the 1715 fleet have done a great service to the state of Florida by cleaning out all the bottle tops and can tabs that we find under there when we're working there. And in those instances, but no, I have not found a Lincoln penny in the Caribbean on a Spanish shipwreck.
We dig those everywhere, so I was just
Yeah.
wondering if that happened too. That was a good question. All right, you got anything, Jeff?
No, not really. I just, getting back to the show. I mean, you guys found a lot of stuff. Um, I noticed, a lot of anchors and different wrecks in different areas.
Hmm.
But mostly it was over through the Bahamas, wasn't it? In that
Yeah.
area.
The season 2 was in the Bahamas, yes, and we were in multiple areas. So we made it look like just one area, but actually it was filmed in multiple areas because we weren't really sure how we were going to film, what we were going to showcase on the show. So
Hmm.
that's why I say that we found close to 100 shipwrecks in season 2, albeit we only showcased a few shipwrecks that you saw on the show. Then we decided, okay, or the producers decided, okay, let's focus on this one and let's look for that one because it was really hard filming Cooper's Treasure because we wanted to keep it as real as it could possibly be, without doing retakes and voiceovers, and sometimes sound didn't come across. That part you just can't help. It's just technical difficulties. So some of that had to be redone. But as far as the diving sequences, we tried to keep it as real as it possibly could be done because we wanted to show people just how difficult and the kind of pressures that a salver has to go through when you only have a certain amount of time and money to accomplish something. And I was truly looking for treasure for the first time. Everywhere you saw us go in Cooper's Treasure, I had never been before, and we found that stuff in the moment, whether it was linear in real time or it was edited in certain times so that it made the storyline complete. But that was all real. If I would have had the time to go dive around there 6 months beforehand, I would have found treasure. I would have found everything way ahead of time because I would have had a lot more time and money on my hands, and then film a TV show and just go back to those spots that I knew where the shipwreck was. No,
Right.
we filmed Cooper's Treasure as you saw it. We were looking for it as you watched us. And people think, wow, they didn't find that much gold. Well, you try to do it in 8 weeks and find treasure coins in 8 weeks. It's not as easy as you think. Even if I have maps associated with Cooper or not, a lot of the stuff I had to readjust and figure out on my own, including today. I'm working on wreck sites that I have nothing to do with Cooper's maps. I just follow the same methodology that Cooper used because I'm in certain areas where I can work now, where in Cooper's there were certain areas that I'm not allowed to work right now. So I have to go to areas I'm permitted to work in, and I use the same methodology, and I've been very successful. So in that regard, that it was very difficult shooting something like that, and I wanted everybody to know that we were as real as we could be, and the emotions were real, and the show was. I didn't want it to be fake.
Yeah,
Right.
well, it comes across as real. That's what I loved about it because I've seen some fake shows, and you can tell. But this question goes right along with what we're talking about now. Mike Mayo is asking, what was the most difficult part about filming for you?
The weather, because we lost a few days while we were doing that. And the other difficult part, if you want to be successful in actually finding it, waiting for a camera crew to get ready, you only get about half of the hours in of actual work because you have an entire film crew with you. And that was very difficult. And because it made us, we would have to wait a lot of the times. But the film crew was fantastic, and they really did their best to accommodate our needs and get out there and just work. But there's only so much you can do when you're actually trying to film something. There's a give and take. You have to allow them the time to get their cameras ready and all of that. And
Yeah.
safety is important. So that was the difficult part.
Yeah,
Now, when Gordo was orbiting the Earth, is when he saw most of it. What he did by eyeball, didn't he? Saw the anomalies in the sand and stuff in the Bahamas.
I think what Gordon was doing, most of his information came from photographs. The crude version of a magnetometer wasn't really it didn't work all that well. I know this because even though we were on the show trying to prove its existence, I know from those engineers that were on the show, who a lot of them have since passed, and I spoke to them, and I know that there was a magnetometer on board, but how well it worked, it probably didn't work as well as the camera equipment that he had. And Gordon had fantastic vision. So between his fantastic vision and his foresight to be able to see the roots, the Spanish roots, and he did a lot of homework before going into space. He carried a 1715 Fleet silver coin with him in space because that's his passion. He was an explorer of all types, whether it's of other worlds, this world, or the world behind us in the colonial period. He knew what he was doing, and but camera equipment was probably his biggest advantage. So I'll say that.
Well, he was a treasure hunter in his own right. He dove a bunch of wrecks, didn't he?
He was a treasure hunter before he was actually in space. And that's the reason he was looking for it while he was in space.
Yeah, he knew what to look for, and that was very smart of him, I think.
Yeah.
The government's got you flying around the space, and you're just saying, I can find something to benefit my life while I'm doing this.
And a lot of people always ask me, well, isn't that government property? No. I mean, while you're up there, you're gathering information, and wasn't that a waste of government's money? And no, because he was doing his job. He was looking for nuclear threats. And if while he's looking for nuclear threats and he's taking photographs and making a mental note of areas that he knows that there's got to be Spanish shipwrecks or early colonial period shipwrecks, whether there's all Spanish or English, doesn't matter. That's something that each one of them had something personal they were doing in space. And that was that's what he wanted to do while he was up there. So looking at photographs, and let's say he brought down 10 photographs and they were looking through the cover and they were, sitting down with him. Okay, do you think there was something on that particular picture that looks like a nuclear threat? No. Okay, we'll avoid that one. Well, on his off time, I'm sure he looked at that picture and goes, damn, there's no nuclear missile, but that looks like a potential site for a shipwreck. I'm going there. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, he did his job. He did what they paid him to do, and he got an extra benefit from it. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Some perks.
Yeah, and he was a smart guy.
He was very intelligent.
Really, really smart. Hey, well, my friend Michael Boyles has said he's retiring from the Navy after 21 and a half years, and he's looking for somebody to give him a treasure coin.
Come to Spanish Main Antiques.
Spanish Main Antiques is
in St. Augustine.
St. Augustine, yes. But you'll have to buy your own, Michael. But thank you for your service, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, this whole country appreciates what you do.
Yes, we do.
All righty. Well, let's get back to some more questions. And we always get the questions of what's the coolest thing you found. What's the nastiest thing you found on the shipwrecks?
Well, I don't know. Nasty. I mean, I've stuck my hand in holes where it just felt disgusting, and I wasn't sure what I was reaching in. I don't even know what to call it. So I've really tried hard to get into cracks or crevices, and I almost got bit by a moray eel by sticking my hand inside there. But gross things, I haven't really run across most gross things. I've jumped in water that I'm going, man, what happened to this? What is floating in the water? And whether it was a strange tide phenomenon or some sort of pollution. I've been more grossed out by trying to fix a broken pipe on a boat than I have anything in the ocean. So, yeah,
I could see that.
Well, then you've got the wildlife to deal with too, don't you?
Yeah, we've got that, and there's a lot of the world under the water is so beautiful. It's something that never ceases to fascinate me. The wildlife in the water and just how beautiful it is, and especially when you get to certain remote areas, just how much bigger everything is. Everything is almost Jurassic in size, whether that be the fish, the plant life, the corals. the lobsters, everything. And it's just pretty an amazing thing to be able to see. And some of the animal life I've seen in the ocean has just been spectacular. Nothing will ever, it's almost just as fun finding the new animals, the fish or sea life, as it is treasure, because it's like there's nothing going to make your job easier than loving the office you are living in. And because my office is so beautiful, that being the ocean, it just makes everything all the worthwhile. So it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So right now, we're not doing any more Cooper's Treasure, correct?
No more Cooper's Treasure. We can talk about it, but there's nothing else ever going to happen with Cooper's Treasure.
Right.
And I would have loved it to have gone on longer, but it just it just wasn't in the cards. The government contracts or whatever else may have made it go away. It's just what it is. And I wasn't done, but that's the reason why I would love to continue doing something else, because I've grown as a person since I've filmed the television show, and I've realized just how much I enjoy what I'm doing, and I would love to be able to continue to tell my stories in whatever format that may be. That's why I agreed to do this show, because I like talking about it. I don't ever get bored of this subject matter.
Yeah.
We like hearing about it, that's for sure.
Yeah. We're all passionate about treasure hunting. Guys who come in my store, they're buying metal detector gear and whatnot. They're not doing it like you did it, or the people who dive on the 1715 plate fleets, but they're doing it in a smaller scale. But they're having fun, and it's just a passion that we all have in finding treasure, digging up a coin that's 200 years old or whatnot. But to me, it's the coolest thing ever. I love my job selling metal detectors and doing it. But I have a few more questions here. And
real quick, Philip.
I got to be quick. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I said I've got one here.
Go ahead.
What were the detectors that you were using? I noticed on the show when it was running, you were using Excalibur 2s. Did you use any other detectors?
I used Mind Labs 3030 when we were on the island, the Excalibur 2, and then I use an Aquapulse. So on different dives, I didn't think I used it on the show, but I may have. I don't remember. I did one scene, yes. But yeah, those are the three that I'm good. And I'll be honest with you, I am not the most knowledgeable when it comes to in the field land metal detecting, as some might like to think I am. I'm still learning a lot about searching for artifacts on land, although I have been very lucky finding stuff on land. It's
We lost you for a second. I think you muted it, Daryl. Did you mute it? Somebody mute. Yeah, we hear you now.
okay. It's my wife calling. I should have put this on a computer rather than my phone. Anyway, so I'm still continuing to learn about metal detecting and different ways of looking at it. It's just there's the only reason why I've been so much successful in my own right is not and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but you got to have some other treasure hunters, the successful ones anyway, know where certain things are going to fall and know where the right places to go looking for it. Because I'm not necessarily the best metal detectorist, but I'm really good at picking out the right spots to go metal detect, so that it increases my chances.
Yes.
And that is something that it's not easy to teach, but you can teach that. But sometimes it's just.
Uh-oh. I think your wife's calling you again. So.
Yeah, we lost them.
Yeah, we lost a phone call. But
Wow, phone. Sorry, but anyway, see,
for a second.
My phone is like a metal detector. Everybody keeps trying to keeps buzzing.
All right. Well, I got a few more comments here, so let me run through them real quick. My good friend Phil Askin, He says, just wanted to say thanks, Daryl. Great show. Want to see more of you. TV, book, anything. Hope your dreams come. And Phil's a good guy, and he's also a Navy guy, too.
Oh, thank you. Also, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that.
And then the next one is from my friend Big League Tibbs. He says, if I could find barber dimes all day long, I'd be happy. Oh, goodness. And then, Jeff Butler's asking, how many Spanish shipwrecks are still left to be found in the Florida area, in your opinion?
Ooh, I'd say tens of thousands of them. You know, and that because it depends on what you're talking about, because not every single one of them was treasure laden.
Yes.
But there were thousands and thousands of ships that came through here over the last 400 or 500 years. And so it's really hard to put a hard number on that, but I would say tens of thousands, but not all of them are going to be treasure laden ships, but they all have a history and they all have something to tell you about the rich history of the early colonial period. That's why even if I don't find a treasure laden wreck, there's always some piece or some artifact that makes that shipwreck unique and interesting and still worth telling the story about.
Yeah, because they had people, sailors on the ships, and they had possessions. Everybody was on the ship had possessions, even if it was just a cargo ship, carrying food or molasses or whatever. There was stuff on there that, it's 500 years old. If you find a spoon or a fork or something.
Absolutely, personal effects. And that's why this is so cool to me, because this is exactly a perfect example of that. There was not a whole lot of treasure on this ship. There was some, but this ship yielded this Mayan pendant, which I just think is super cool.
Yeah, it is.
I got one.
Just off of YouTube. In the past 2 years of all the hurricanes Florida has had, they want to know how does it really affect the shipwrecked positions?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. When you think about a shipwreck that's been in the water, for example, 350 years, and how many hurricanes must have passed in those 350 years, most of the artifacts, unless they're sitting on a ledge of a very large contour that falls off into deep water, in those cases, yes, you might get some losses there. But for the most part, shipwrecks wrecked on shallow reefs, and the material that's not organic is going to remain right there. Silver is going to degrade in the ocean. Gold will always stay the same. Cuprous materials will last much longer. So does it have a whole lot of effect? Not really. In fact, sometimes the only thing you can hope for is if you're working in an area where there's a shipwreck, that the hurricane uncovers some of the things that might have been under the sand longer or all this time. Or it could have the adverse effect, and that is that more sand will be covering up that wreck. So that might be the only thing. But as far as the shipwreck and the material moving, very little of that. And we don't worry about hurricanes really changing much of the topography of the shipwreck area.
Okay, well, that question came from Diggin, Florida with Bill Gross, so wanted to give him a shout out. Thanks for that question. Okay,
Yeah,
Philip?
I got another one here. Gary Toledo is asking, do you think, Daryl, there's a lot of illegal activity, treasure hunting activity going on in the water?
Well, it's like anything else. Yes, there's going to be some bad apples. There's going to be some people doing stuff that's illegal. And then there's going to be innocent people who are just picking up stuff that they didn't know was illegal to take off the beach. But I do know that in poorer countries, in the Caribbean, a lot of the fishermen are very well versed in where treasure or shipwreck locations are. And how could you stop them from taking something if they're diving down to pick up a lobster cage or whatever, or they're spear diving down there and they see a gold coin or a silver coin or an artifact of interest, for them to pick it up? Yeah, that happens. It happens all the time, but I can guarantee you it doesn't happen very often. And the people like that, the local fishermen, really don't have the financial wherewithal or time to even explore that or do a proper survey or excavation of materials. So it's not something I would really worry about. Are there crooked treasure hunters? Yeah. And that's probably one of the reasons they use that against us, especially the UNESCO and those other organizations, because if you find the bad apples in the bunch, it seems to spoil the entire basket of fruit. When
Yes.
normally most treasure hunters that I'm acquainted with and work with, the problem with treasure hunters today is they're so competitive that they just can't get along. That is their biggest problem. Other than that, most of them are honest. Most of them are hardworking. But if you get them in a big party where they get together once a year and they talk, they're your best friend. But as soon as they leave, they are trash talking each other, and they hate each other, and they're fighting, and they're. That's what I try to stay away from, is the bad, all of that infighting amongst treasure hunters. And it's probably just because it's such a competitive industry and everybody's trying to one up each other. I don't know why. But if they realized just how that works against us as a whole, when we're trying to make UNESCO and NOAA and the state learn to love us, we are our own worst enemy sometimes. The way we trash talk each other. And I'm not really guilty of that, because I don't care about that stuff. And that's one of the reasons I prefer to work on my own in more remote areas, in international waters, where I can avoid all of that trash talking. And because unfortunately, I'm sure there's guys out there to listen to this show and goes, that guy's so full of it because he's nobody. He doesn't work hard. He's not a 9-to-5 treasure hunter. Well, okay, so I'm a 9-to-3 treasure hunter, 3 days a week. Who cares? You just can't stop the bad mouthing of each other. And unfortunately, that is our biggest weakness in the industry, is how much these guys talk bad about each other. And some will stick together in little groups. Reminds me of high school. The groupies, everybody's in their little groups, and how much they love each other. And then one will break off and go to the other side and go, oh, I know all the secrets. And it's just so silly, but it works against us.
I wanted to thank you for being on here. It looks like our hour has come and gone, but
that was a fast hour, fun hour, and everybody who's paying attention. And thank you to both of you guys for letting me be a part of this. I love doing this. It's fun. I love talking treasure, and sometimes I talk too much.
Why don't you, when you can talk about some of the things that's coming up, let's stay in touch, and, we'll get you back on here pretty soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
of course.
Anything you're doing, put on our Facebook page so we can let our members know what's coming down the pike.
Okay.
And I want to thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you guys, and thank you to everybody who's listening or watching,
everybody
for the great questions. A lot of great questions today. Thank you guys. And sometimes I talk too much, but sometimes I'm.
Yeah, they love listening.
The theme is the time went too quick.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Jeff.
I appreciate it
for helping me. And I guess that's about going to do it, isn't it, Jeff?
Yep, that's going to do it. Everybody, just remember, next week we have Trevor from Coil Tech to talk about the new Mind Lab coils that are coming out. And make sure you get over to Spanish Main Antiques and talk to Mark. And you never know, you can run into Daryl when you're over there.
You never know. I'm there sometimes, so come on by. If I'm not there, right. Mark is just as passionate as I am, and he'll talk your ear off.
Yes,
he does. A good guy. So, folks, we will see you next Monday night, and you may see us doing a couple things live before that, but we'll see you next Monday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Treasure Talk. Daryl, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, everybody.
Happy hunting, guys.
You too.